Hello, welcome everybody. Welcome. Thank you for joining tonight. We're just admitting everybody from the weight room lobby area, I guess. So if you can give me like a thumbs up in the chat if you can hear properly. If it's easy for you to turn on your screen, you can turn on your screen so that we can see you here tonight as well. Hi Helen. Hi Carol. Hi everyone else, Ted, Constance, Diane, Mike, Nancy, if I'm reading them right. Oh, hi Nancy.
Hi.
Thanks for coming. Can you hear us okay?
Yes.
Excellent. Perfect. People are also noting in the chat that they can see and hear. That's excellent. Welcome everyone. We're just giving everyone a few minutes to trickle in here. So the title of tonight's workshop is Near Net Zero by 2030, ? Financing and grant writing. So, oh, hi, Ted. Can you hear us?
Yeah.
Excellent. So the goal of tonight's workshop is that you leave here feeling like you have a few good tips and tricks for when you face a financing or grant writing or other sort of proposal style challenge, probably related to your church. And we have 4 great guest speakers, and they're each going to give us really short, less than 10-minute spiels on their topic of expertise, and then we'll have a little bit of Q&A, move on to the next person, and at the end of at the end of the presentation, we'll have a full half-hour Q&A networking discussion session at the end. I think this might be for most of the attendees for tonight, so I'll begin our presentation. Just mention that the meeting is being recorded. We'll be posting the workshop online, but we'll cut out, I believe, anything that involves you as participants if you don't want that online. So don't worry about Q&As and stuff. That'll be cut out, but the presentations will be available on YouTube afterwards, so you can share it with your friends if there was anything that was useful, or watch it again. So this is a welcome to each of you here. A little note, this symbol we have on the slide in the bottom left-hand corner of the screen actually came from a really active volunteer in the Shining Water Social and Ecological Justice Commission, whose passion is targeting climate change. And this symbol indicates that you are working on targeting, preventing, and reducing climate change. So you can link it into your email and other things if you want to put it somewhere as a little graphic. It's communicating that this is a major passion for you. As we begin tonight, we also wanted to sort of recognize that as we're thinking about environmental issues, it definitely links naturally into thinking about the world, the land, and who's been on the land. And I'm coming from the Toronto region, so that would be the Huron-Wendat, the Haudenosaunee, the Mississaugas of the New Credit, and the Anishinaabe nations, depending on where you're coming from in the Shining Waters region. There might be other nations that you can list. If you want to drop it in the chat, if you're familiar with that and you want to share that, feel free, but you don't have to. So this is just a moment to think about all the different ways that we commit ourselves to trying to care, respect, and reach reconciliation. And one of them is in the common goal of trying to protect our environment and not exploit it. So I'm just going to take a look in the chat. Somebody has dropped. Oh, a note taker for the meeting. Okay. Nobody has dropped. Nobody has dropped their land acknowledgement. That's okay. Also a little bit about us. We've been running the Shining Water Social and Ecological Justice Commission has been running a series of workshops on various themes connected to ecological justice and your churches. If you go to our website, you can see, or our YouTube channel, you can see previous talks, which include green space, energy efficiency in your buildings, green design in your congregations. So all those resources are available for free to you if you're interested. You can also email us or call us and say, hey, I'd like to know more about this. Do you have anything? Do you have anyone you can connect us to? And we're happy to try to develop and strengthen a network of volunteers who are passionate about ecological justice and who want to connect around projects and resources. So here again, a brief recap of the agenda for tonight. When I stop talking, we're going to hear from Stephen Collett from Faithful Footprints. After that, Adam Scott from Shift, Agnes Richard from, am I pronouncing this correctly, Movement Ladotsi Movement Canada?
That's pretty close. We've tried to make it bilingual, so it's Mouvement Ladotsi Movement Canada.
Okay, Movement Canada. And Daniel Reed from the Toronto United Church Council. Then we'll move into having a full group discussion after the break. So I think I'm a little ahead of schedule, but I have the slides ready for Stephen, if you're ready to present.
Thank you, Jay. Welcome, everybody. My name is Stephen Collett. I work with Faith and the Common Good. For those of you who do not know, Faith and the Common Good is a multi-faith national nonprofit started by the former moderator of the United Church, Bill Phipps, and Reverend Ted Reeve. We are the delivery partners for the United Church of Canada's Faithful Footprints grant program. I am the grant manager to decarbonizing and energy efficiency grant program. Just so you know, I am the nerd. I'm a building scientist. I'm a sustainable building consultant, and I'm a heritage professional specializing in faith community buildings. So yes, I'm a whole lot of nerd. And in fact, for the grant program, I'm your nerd to help you through the process. I'm actually here to help you make the best decisions possible. And I'm doing that on the head office's dime. So keep that in mind. You can ask me tons of questions all the time to help you with the process. Today, we're just going to talk about energy efficiency and money and opportunities. So I'm going to start with that. Next slide, pretty please. First, this is called the Pyramid of Energy Conservation or the Pyramid of Energy Efficiency. There are different versions around out there. I use this version from Minnesota Power because it's actually the original one. They're the first ones to make it. Now, when we're looking at saving energy on a building, we always want to start with the foundational things right at the very bottom, which is actually understanding and comprehension. Things like knowing your bill, knowing how much you consume, stuff like that. And then you want to move up the pyramid, low cost and no cost, programmable thermostats, settings. Then the first thing out of the gate is lighting. Lighting for us is an easy opportunity for payback. Weather stripping, air sealing, super, super critical. Your attic hatch in your bell tower is bleeding huge amount of dollars, and I would measure that in cubic meters of air leaving your bell tower per minutes. Those sort of energy loss. Appliances, insulation, water heating, it goes up and up. Please note that windows and renewable energy are at the tippy top. They're at the tippy top. Everyone thinks that you can save tons of money replacing your windows, and that is absolutely incorrect. If you really believe that, I recommend you smash all your stained glass and just brick it over, which of course none of us are going to be doing because that would be ridiculous. Actually, in our buildings, it's the air leakage, and that is where we're losing most of the energy. And finally, you don't put renewable energies on your building from an energy perspective or a cost perspective if you're rocking a 1950s avocado green refrigerator in your kitchen. So it's always about doing the low cost things first and making sure you got a good plan that's actually going to give you payback. All right, and so that's what that slide's for. It's a great resource. You can always use it. Faith in the Common Good, we have a bunch of resources that are also free. We have a DIY Faith Building Energy Audit Guide on the left. That is a PDF that you can download. Now, you don't even have to go to our website. The link is there. If you go to the Faithful Footprints website, which is at the end of this deck, you can actually get right to these two guidebooks from there. So the Do-It-Yourself Energy Audit Guidebook, great inventory process. So I really like that book. It came from Manitoba Hydro, great document. The Energy Star Action Workbook for Congregations, that's from the US, another great book. We're the only Canadian organization partnering with the US EPA on this, so that's pretty amazing. And we're pretty proud of that. So these are both free. There's good and bad in both of them. For the DIY, I don't do the lighting part. It's grossly outdated. We're trying to update it. But LED, yes or no, is what you should be doing. But both are really good documents and they're free. And free is awesome. Next slide. Also on our website is the treasure map, which is a sort of gamifies doing an energy walkthrough in your building. So that's kind of fun if you want to get younger people involved. That's a great way to go about it. And many of you have probably had energy audits in your own home over the years through various government programs. And you would have actually received this book on the right called Keeping the Heat In. It's actually a really great resource. It's written for humans, not for nerds like me. So really digestible information that kind of explains the rationale on how to go about actually energy saving. So if you've had one of those done in the years, you may have the book, you may have the disc. It is online for free. It's a great resource. I recommend you read it. Next slide. Once you go past sort of what you know or what you don't know, you might want to have someone else come in and help. And there's a few different ways to go about that. So this is where we talk about the audit scope. First is that do-it-yourself. I am English, Irish, French, and Scotch, so I have all the cheap covered. So I always recommend starting with the free thing. After that, fee for services, there's a variety. We as Faith in the Common Good offer a virtual green audit. That is me here. That's you there walking around your building via Zoom, showing me your building, and me mostly trying not to throw up as you walk around, and just giving insights on what we can see. You usually get a copy of the Zoom recording and you get a one-page bullet points, and that costs $100 an hour. And green audit from us, that's me in person, walking through the building, or my colleague, David Patterson, who I suspect some of you may know. Certainly the Patterson family is known to most of Toronto. The green audit, we do look at energy, but we look at air quality, food, water, waste, marketing, heritage, rental, bums and seats. How do we make everything sustainable within the building? That's going to take half a day, 3/4 of a day. You're going to get a report that's like 30 to 40 pages outlining recommendations. Cost for that somewhere between $12.50 and $17.50, depending on square footage. Energy audits, you're going to get one of those, especially if there's a grant program that you need to access. Energy audits are delivered by third parties. Depending on your square footage, typical sort of market value would be like 5 to 10 grand. But if that allows you to access money, you should totally do it. You're going to get actual payback calculations on that. If you did this, the payback will be that. And that can be really, really helpful, especially for those in the finance team wanting to partner with the building team. Finally, engineering audits, you're going to do those when you're doing large capital campaign, major renovations and additions, and they're going to calculate the payback on everything right down to the light bulb. And you're going to be north of 10 grand or something like that for most buildings. So this is a spectrum. It's a rainbow. Not everything is for everybody, but there are choices out there, and finding what you need to move forward is really, really critical. Next slide. So because we're here in the Regional Council, Shining Waters, the United Church's Faithful Footprints Grant Program. Like I said, I am the grant manager. You can access up to $20,000 for energy efficiency activities. That is things like lights and appliances and insulation and air sealing and windows and doors and stuff like that. Okay. However, if one of your items is decarbonizing, and we define that as physically removing a fuel burning appliance and replacing it with electric. If you're doing one of those, then the pot actually gets bigger to a maximum of $30,000. Not two pots, one pot. The United Church of Canada head office is encouraging decarbonizing, so they're putting more money in that pot, and that's how it works. Now, for every $1 that your congregation brings to the table, or your camp, if you know a camp, or any other property, for every $1 you bring, the United Church will bring 2. So this is not a 50-50 split. This is a 1/3, 2/3 split in your favor up to those grant maximums. So that means if you got a project that's got some lights and some appliances and some thermostats, and maybe you're putting heat pumps in and getting rid of a furnace, and let's say all of that came to $45,000, you could get $30,000 from us and you would pay $15,000. And that's a pretty darn good deal. And you can use other funds as your contribution, which we're going to hear from Daniel about that next. Next slide. And so what are the other funds out there? Well, you want to check with your municipality first and foremost. Now, Toronto has great energy division. And so you want to check with them and they'll know of any grants available to you. You want to check your regional council because they're pretty awesome folks running workshops like this and supports. Your energy providers, definitely. So that's gas and electricity. Your gas company won't help you get off gas. They're weird that way, but they may have some grants available. Your electrical provider, Toronto Hydro for everyone here, and Ontario Hydro for those north of the city. There are some grants actually. There is some money out there, so you definitely want to do that. And federally, there's nothing on the table, but with elections potentially around the corner, everyone will try to bribe us. And so let's hope that there's money coming down the pipe. When in doubt, you can always check with your members of parliament or provincial parliament as well. This is all really important, especially if you're chasing money. If you get $2,500 from your hydro for LED lights and you're doing the Faithful Footprints grant, which you should, we'll actually double that contribution. So if you get $2,500 from them, we'll put $5 on the table and you haven't spent any money. Now, that's an amazing opportunity, and that's leveraging opportunity. The United Church of Canada allows this because it's not hurting them. It's only making more awesome and impact, both for your operational costs and for your mission. So it's really, really critical. Next slide. And that's all I got. So faithfulfootprints.org. There is no deadline. There is no clock on the Faithful Footprints running out. We are one of the 7 pillars, missional pillars. We're not going anywhere. But until I have a conversation with you, which means you go there to the website, you fill out an expression of interest. And once I get that and we have a conversation, that's when the clock starts. Anything you purchase before that, I cannot help you with. Okay, so if you guys are like someone shopping windows or doors or boilers, you need to get that expression of interest into me straight away, and let's have that conversation. Okay, so that we're not going to leave you out of potential opportunities financially. All right, that's it for me. I can take questions now. We can certainly do questions later. But thanks for listening. Grateful.
Thank you so much, Stephen. We'll take a couple questions now, 1 or 2, and then we can do more questions afterwards. Do we have anyone with questions at this point? Maybe you're percolating on them. Okay, I have a question for you, which is these grants sound excellent. What's the area they cover? Where's Shining Waters holding the event? Is it available to anyone within Shining Waters?
Yes, it's a national grant program, so everyone can apply. And like I said, it's not just congregational spaces, it's all United Church property. So that does include camps, we've done retreat centers, and places like that as well.
Thank you very much.
In the chat is the link to the Faithful Footprints grant, so people can just click on that if your congregation isn't already participating.
Any other questions at this time? Hearing none right now, we'll give everyone a minute to think on that for the Q&A afterwards, and we'll move on to our next presenter. I think the next one I had on the agenda was Adam Scott. Is that right?
Sure, that can make sense.
I will stop sharing because I understand do not need.
Hi, folks. Thanks for having me. I'm going to change the topic slightly. I'm the odd one out in this conversation, but I think it's fine. I think it fits in quite well. I'm really excited to hear that program that Stephen just presented on exists. That's an unbelievable opportunity in the world of retrofits, in my experience. And I will say personally, I've energy audited and fully electrified and retrofit my own house and gone through the process, and it's well worth it for comfort and for emissions and for money reasons. So very excited to see that. So I'm Adam Scott. I'm the executive director of a small advocacy project in Canada. It's a nonprofit project called Shift Action for Pension Wealth and Planet Health. And I'm really here just to bring you another important tool you might not have considered in your climate action journey that has a huge impact in terms of financing the transition. So it's not congregation focused. It's actually much broader and much higher level in terms of finance. But I think it's a tool that if you haven't heard of it before, can give you a tremendous amount of leverage individually or as a group to have a major impact on the climate crisis. And so I want to talk to you quickly about why your pension fund and pension funds generally can be a key lever for financing the energy transition and solving the climate crisis. And I'll say off the bat, all Canadians, working Canadians over the age of 18 are a member of at least one major pension fund. And outside of Quebec, for all of you, that will be the Canada Pension Plan at minimum. And if you have an employer pension, be it a private employer pension, or if you're a public sector worker, a teacher, a nurse, municipal employee, you may have a defined pension plan as well in addition. So many folks in Canada, working or retired, are members of at least one, or are often more than one large defined benefit pension plan. And pensions are essential because they're one of the largest pools of capital that exists in our country. The pensions that shift tracks, the 11 largest in Canada, have a combined assets under management of $2.1 trillion. Total in Canada, the pension sector is nearly $4 trillion, which is just a scale that's hard to sort of comprehend in terms of capital. And that wealth is actually allocated, which means invested around the world. That's not just invested within Canada. So it has this unbelievable reach into every area of our society. And decisions about how that capital is allocated and invested has a tremendous impact on our ability to address the crisis. So our organization Shift actually works with the members of pension plans to empower them to actually engage their own pension fund, to make sure that the pension fund actually has a credible climate plan, has clear targets and detailed action, and is actually changing the way that they invest to align with net zero. So that's what we do. Somebody was really kind and put shiftaction.ca, that's our website, in the chat. And if you go there, you'll be able to find action tools right away where it'll let you select which pension you might be part of. And you can send a letter directly to your own pension fund and ask them questions about how they're working on climate change. We track the climate plans of all of the largest pensions, and we track them very closely, and we provide tools for individuals to engage. So it's tremendously important. A couple of things I want to say about pensions generally. One is which is it's incredibly important that pensions take climate action and have credible climate plans for the sake of the pension itself. So their legal fiduciary duty to make sure that they can pay out your pension when you retire for as long as you're retired depends on a stable climate. It depends on them having expertise and an understanding of this energy transition that is rapidly picking up steam around the world. And if they do not have that, they're exposing all of our pensions to tremendous financial risk. And that's something that we track, and I could do a whole presentation. I normally will do a 45-minute presentation on all of the different types of climate-related financial risk. If you want to come to a longer talk about this, we often host webinars and longer versions of that. You can see that on our website as well. We'll have some upcoming ones coming in the new year, but if you sign our action tool, we'll keep in touch with you and let you know. But I can talk endlessly about that. But really, I think I want to get into the quickly sort of what this looks like in practice. If you send a letter to your pension fund, and we've been working with groups of pension fund members for years, asking the pension fund to actually take action on climate, they are acting to change the way that they invest. And that would require them to shift capital out of the causes of the climate crisis. So literally taking money out of fossil fuels, divesting, putting screens in place so that they stop continuing to invest in the causes of the problem, and to reallocate that capital and more into profitable climate solutions. So into electrification, into energy efficiency, into clean transportation, into building heat, all of these things that we need to actually make the transition. And we are seeing pension funds doing that. So we've seen a growing movement with pressure from pension members of these asset owners to actually change the way that they invest. They've dramatically reduced the amount that they're investing already in fossil fuels. Some have announced screens and pieces of divestment. A good example is the CDPQ, the large public pension fund in Quebec for all Quebec workers, has already divested completely from oil. Over $4 billion in oil divestment happened a couple of years ago due to pressure of this kind. And we're seeing some funds like IMCO, which is the pension fund for Ontario public sector employees. They're part of the Ontario Pension Board. If you have an OPB pension, this is you. They have committed to 20% of their assets under management being allocated to climate solutions specifically. So for them, that's many billions of dollars being moved intentionally into this sector, and it's going to be tremendously profitable. This is where the growth in our economy is going, and this is where your ability of your pension to pay out in 20 years and 30 years time will actually be possible if they're actually making these strategic investments. I can say a lot more, but I think it's better maybe if I wrap up there. There's going to be a bunch of questions, but yeah, we can talk more about that in the details if anyone has any specific questions now, but I think I'll just wrap there. And please do go visit our website and check out the action tools that we have. And thanks for having me for a few minutes. I know we're sort of talking about a couple of different, very closely related but slightly different scale actions today.
It's all money, right? Thank you so much. Yeah. That's the connecting theme. So I did also put the link in the chat there to the webinars and workshops. I can see that there are some of the longer, I think some of them are already recorded, and then there are probably also live workshops. Is it a kind of combo of the two?
Yeah, that's right. You can find pre-recorded webinars that we've done on different subjects. So if you're part of a different pension, you can actually get specific ones on, if you're an Ontario teacher, for example, you can find webinars there, healthcare workers, all of that sort of thing. BC, we have operations, we work on Canada Pension Plan. And as well, we publish a report card every single year on the climate plans of all the large Canadian pensions. You can find that there and get specific detailed information about your own pension if you like.
Yeah,
And,
thank you. So I will take one or two questions now. Sorry, yeah. If anybody has any. I think we have a quiet group tonight.
that's okay.
I have a question. How would we find out whether or not our pension was already taking action or needed pressure put on it?
Yeah, I mean, our website's a good place to start. We are the sort of pension watchdog. We track them closely. If you look, you'll find no pension's perfect. Every single one of them has a lot more that they could be doing and will be doing. And so if you look in our report card, if you go click through to the reports page there, you'll see our latest report card for 2023 for last year. And you'll see your own pension will pop up and you can click on it. There's also a page that'll help you figure out which pension you might be part of if you're not aware. Some people aren't. And if you click through there, there's a bunch of materials that can show you that. So that's a key thing. It's important to understand sort of where the problems are. I'll just say quickly, most Canadian pension funds have yet to make a full divestment commitment. And a lot of them are amongst the largest private finance managers in the country. And so they will often own whole pieces of infrastructure. Like the entire gas network in the UK is owned by a Canadian pension fund, as an example. And so that's the kind of investment scale we're talking about. And so most of these funds have yet to make the clear commitment to phase out those kinds of assets. And it's a tremendous financial risk for members of pensions. And it's obviously a huge driver of the climate crisis itself.
Hey, thank you. I'm going to transition over to our third speaker now. And our third speaker is Agnes Richer. So let me share some slides here. Is that coming up for everyone?
I can see it. Looks good.
Perfect. So Agnes is going to speak to us from Movement Canada. And yeah, here you go.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me to speak. I'm going to talk about this toolkit, but first I'll give you a little bit of a background of who I am. I'm the Canadian chapter animator for Mouvement Laudato Si Movement Canada. That word Laudato Si is what Pope Francis named his letter to the world, Laudato Si on care of our common home, back in 2015, and it comes from St. Francis of Assisi. Laudato Si is praise you, Lord God, for all that is in creation. So that's why Pope Francis named the encyclical on care of our common home, Laudato Si. So I am, like Stephen, a project of faith in the common good. I also have another parent partner, and that is the International Laudato Si movement. So I'm the Canadian chapter of a larger movement. In 2021, a team of 5 researchers and writers worked to prepare this virtual toolkit. It was originally designed for the Catholic community in Canada, but much of its content is applicable to any faith community who wants to align their financial assets with concerns for ecological justice. Everyone's invited to visit the web pages in the Faith in the Common Goods resource section. Next slide, please. So early in 2021, we began this project with a set of 4 webinars designed to explore various ways that faith communities might realign their retirement savings and investments with a lens to a healthy planet. These 4 webinars explored topics like laying the groundwork, which discusses the climate crisis itself and how investments and money can impact momentum towards a less polluting energy future. Another webinar had to do with shareholder engagement as a way of using shares in companies to inform CEOs of shareholder concerns for the environment. And this talks about things like ESGs that you might hear that term come up, environmental, social, and governance benchmarks as how investments are measured against those things. Our third webinar looked at Indigenous and impact investment as options with options that you can use your money for once you've decided to divest. And then the fourth one talked about positive and negative asset screens. And Adam just talked about that a little bit in terms of pensions. It includes divestments from fossil fuels as a given. These are all recorded and they're available through the toolkit or on the Faith in the Common Good YouTube channel. Next slide, please. Now, built into the toolkit are little snippets of things that are free for anyone to pull out and use. And I want to bring your attention to some of the short videos we have. They're under 5 minutes, and they include Climate Change 101, like the science, but in clear terms that may be a bit easier for people to understand, and actually point to some of the disruptions we can see in the future too, and how those happen. You know, what happens if the Greenland ice sheet melts? You know, and so these are condensed into very short little videos. The second one, it shows in French, but I have all of the videos and all the content in both French and English. But another one discusses addressing climate change from a spiritual and moral point of view, you know, in terms of social justice issues. So it connects the dots of why this is important for faith communities to work on. And the third short video actually has testimonies from a number of religious communities who have already divested, and they talk about their experience in doing so and what it's meant for their investments. So some people did this step back in 2014 when, through Faith in the Common Good, there was a push towards divestment called Fossil Fuel Faith. Others still have to make that step with their personal and organizational investments. So people who have done it before are willing to mentor people who are just beginning to think about doing divestment and reassessing their investments now. Next slide, please. The toolkit's divided into 3 main sections: see, judge, and act. And each of these has a drop-down menu below the green button that helps readers easily navigate back and forth through the sections and subheadings. So I'm going to look at each of those a little bit for you to give you an idea of what the content is, and hopefully inspire you to look at this closer. So next slide, please. The C section describes the climate crisis, anchors caring for our common home and moral considerations, introduces how money can be used in service of finding solutions to the climate crisis, and how pivoting away from fossil fuel investments can help free up funds to invest in clean energy or sustainability projects. Next slide. In the judge section, we look at what faith communities are already doing and how they're using these ideas globally. The section provides a detailed discernment process with 5 sets of questions that are available in printable forms. So you see that teal square at the bottom right. You can click on that and then print the first page of the sets of questions that we have available. And these were developed in Ireland, actually, and were very successful tools that were used by many religious communities in the UK to divest. So these are proven as very helpful discussion directors to help people work through the process of assessing what they have, deciding if they need to change, and how to do that change. Next slide, please. Within the judge section, our team of researchers and writers wanted to include some very specific Canadian context type questions, things that you might come up against within your faith community for people who are not sure that actually divesting from fossil fuels is a good idea. Like you drive a car, why do you not think that supporting fossil fuels is a good idea? That's actually maybe a conversation that's doesn't come up so much anymore because we're already investing in electric vehicles and things like that. But there are other things where we've tried to address some of the questions that you might face and give you some common sense and researched answers to help your discernment process. Next slide, please. Yep. The judge section also has details about positive and negative asset screens. It also has inspiring information about how the shift in asset allocation can address the calls to action in the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. Did you know that Indigenous businesses are poised to bring $1 billion to the Canadian economy in the next few years? There's huge possibility of investing with Indigenous entrepreneurs. And by doing that, you address 2 key points in Canadian society right now, the TRC Commission and climate change. So it's got a win-win on both sides. Next slide, please. Finally, in the Act section, it provides access to make a commitment to divestment. This section provides information about market and non-market investment alternatives, and it gives detailed resource sections with the videos, case studies, and printable resources like those questions I mentioned earlier. And also a question and fact sheet to bring to your financial advisor when you're ready to have a conversation with them. One thing I can say is that 10 years ago, when some of these faith communities in the testimonials section had their discussions with financial advisors, it was sometimes the first time that financial advisors were faced with either the idea of divestment or investing for a healthy future. Now, 10 years later, those conversations are much easier, and there are many options available to divest in renewable energy or other things. The other thing I'll say is that there is a huge uptick in impact investing, so much so that an organization called SVX has this year launched a study and a workbook to use alongside the Toronto Stock Exchange to assess impact investment opportunities through the stock exchange. So that's huge. That allows people to choose local investment options, maybe on a smaller scale, but certainly ones that will have impact in their own communities. So that's really, really exciting. Next slide. Okay, I'll put these in the chat as well, but these are the links to both the French and the English toolkit. It'll take you there directly, but you can also find it through the resources of Faith in the Common Good. And I wanted to bring your attention to two other things that you might want to consider around lobbying and action. And one is, as an individual or as a faith community, look up the Fossil-Free Non-Proliferation Treaty. They have a letter of endorsement there specifically for members of faith communities to sign. And there's hundreds there. This non-proliferation treaty is growing by leaps and bounds. There is a group, Lutherans in Montreal, who are looking to do a climate pilgrimage between Montreal and Ottawa, and then on their last day, lobby the federal government to become part of this fossil-free non-proliferation treaty. It is spoken about in the last 3 COPs, I believe. And the other one is considering how you do your everyday banking. Canada's top 5 banks are some of the largest investors of new and expanding fossil fuel infrastructure and projects around the world. Last year, RBC was the largest, and there's a campaign to ask RBC to reconsider that. That campaign comes from Stand Earth, and it's called Banking on a Better Future, so you can look that up as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Agnes. That was a really great set of resources you put in front of us, a really interesting presentation. I know that's something I considered in my own life is when I'm putting aside savings, I went to my credit union and I said, what do you have that's not fossil fuels? And at the time, I think they were like, nah, not as good options, but actually they worked out just as well. So maybe it's not even a personal sacrifice anymore to kind of ask these questions. So. Oh,
it isn't. In fact, people, well, my family, we personally moved our pensions out of CIBC just before the last, well, before COVID and before the last real big dip in price per barrel of oil. And we did much better than people who hadn't divested from fossil fuels. And even though that has a bit of a roller coaster ride right now, the future trajectory is, as Adam said, it will be a liability to hold assets in fossil fuel companies going forward. So wars aside, you know, like what happened when Ukraine was invaded by Russia. But in Canada, you mentioned a good point, Jay, in that credit unions are often a better option if you want to move your personal finances away from organizations that heavily invest in fossil fuels, as our banks do.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. So does anyone have questions for Agnes at this time? Okay, it's all quiet. I do see a link here between what Adam was talking about and what Agnes is talking about. So I guess we are covering sort of personal finance, organizational finance, grants. It's a hodgepodge. It's a smorgasbord tonight.
And actually, when you look at the toolkit, we do reference SHIFT as well. So, but other organizations like SHARE, people who are involved with finance communities might know SHARE as a shareholder engagement advisory group that helps hold corporations accountable around the ESG goals. So there's lots of resources in the toolkit. So.
Yeah, thank you very much. So then we're going to hear from our final speaker tonight, Daniel Reed, from the Toronto United Church Council. I think we're moving back a little bit more into grant writing and that space, right?
Yeah, that's the plan. Good evening, everyone. Hello. Thanks, Jay. My name is Daniel. I'm part of the staff team at TUCC. We're an independently incorporated, not-for-profit, but committed to providing professional supports to United Churches across Southern Ontario. Our goal is to connect resources with ministry, and one of my roles with the Toronto United Church Council is supporting the Sustainable Energy Loan Fund, which I'll be speaking about in a moment. I'm also coming to TUCC from a congregational context, officially as a minister in the United Church of Canada, and unofficially as a congregation's grant writer in residence, and wanted to share some of the three of the fundamentals I've learned and that I'd focus on when drafting an application. For me, the first thing I want to be paying attention to is developing a project idea that explicitly meets the vision of the funding organization. I'd spend some time reading and thinking about their granting principles, reading and thinking about their organizational objectives, reading their annual reports and the message from their president. I would check out where their funding comes from and what the goals of their funder might be that are animating their investment in this particular agency. For me, I've often found that it is more efficient and effective to come up with a project to meet the grant in front of me rather than looking around to try to find a grant that might meet the project, both in terms of seeking to meet those organizational priorities, but also just recognizing that annual grant cycle. Things aren't always there exactly in the moment that you would like them to be. I have found in the moments when I have come to an application with a project in mind, I still want to deconstruct it and think through that application as though I were encountering it with an empty piece of paper in front of me, and to think through how the project that I am secretly working towards might serve those organizational goals. Ultimately, we want to help the funder to see our project as a way for them to meet their institutional objectives. And within that, between you and I am also imaginatively ensuring that the project budget might meet multiple congregational objectives. The EV equipment that you might need for a workshop series, for example, is the same, potentially the same equipment that you might need for hybrid worship on a Sunday morning. The second piece of the grant writing fundamentals that I use is to precisely answer the questions that are asked of me. Perhaps this feels transformative because I am foolish. Perhaps it is in fact actually quite useful. For me, when I have submitted grant applications, I am also doing so while balancing about 1,000 other congregational tasks. And while that's true of our clergy, it is also true of our congregational volunteers, all of whom are wearing about 4 hats, I feel. Because of that, I always look for the core obstacles up front. Is this an application that is going to ask me for multiple quotes? Is this an application that's going to ask me for financial statements? Is this an application that's going to ask me for a letter of support? What are the things that are going to require a couple of weeks to actually work their way through the system before they can be finalized? I want to repeat the language that the funding agency uses. If they refer to marginalized communities as a priority, I try not to say vulnerable populations. I try to say marginalized communities. I try to think about what it is the question is asking. If it wants an evaluation plan, I'm trying not to write something that is actually project implementation. If they want a demographic analysis, I'm trying not to write justification for the project. I'm trying to use short sentences. I'm trying to use bullet points. I'm trying to use subheadings. I like to imagine myself reading 500 applications. There are a lot of good projects here. I'm trying to read quickly, trying to cut things that can be easily cut so that I can actually make a couple of good recommendations. And we don't want our applications to be ones that can be easily cut because they missed some silly thing in the application. The other big fundamental that I wanted to articulate is an invitation to make grant applications a regular and sustainable part of your congregational stewardship strategy. We think through congregational funding through the lens of givings from our members. Maybe we'll send out a stewardship letter. Maybe we'll have a plan for talking to folks about making a bequest. Often we try to think up a wise and a useful invitation to the offering on Sunday morning. We think about congregational finance from a building perspective when we think about community groups renting our space. Grant applications can be a meaningful contribution to your congregational finance. Typically, they're not going to help with your core operational budgetary needs, but certainly they can finance high-cost one-off needs or short-term projects very easily. Along with that, I have found it often much easier to persuade a congregational board to try something new if they are not responsible for paying for it. And so it is also being able to secure external funding is a way to deal with that predilection towards the reliable status quo. If we're going to do this regularly, it can't just be one person taking the lead. We need a team. We need to think through who in our congregation and who in our wider community of people who think that the church is doing useful work in its neighborhood are good at writing, know funding sources, are willing to commit to drafting or editing an application. I would say I would invite congregations to set a goal of 3 to 4 grant applications a year. And even if you get 25%, 50% of the applications you write, that's a revenue stream coming into the congregation that for many of our churches we aren't historically making use of. And if you're writing 3 to 4 applications a year, even while attending to fundamental number 1, developing a project idea that explicitly meets the vision of the funding organization, over time, we start to notice our funders asking similar questions and realize that it begins to be possible to quote ourselves. Happy to chat more, but in the interest of time, those are my big 3. I also wanted to do a short pivot and talk about the Toronto United Church Council. We do have some grants available, but I would say the most relevant funding opportunity for tonight's group is our Sustainable Energy Loan Fund. We have loans for sustainable energy capital projects in communities of faith in Ontario. You saw Stephen's pyramid of projects that churches should consider. That fund will pay for all of them except for the very bottom foundational layer of understanding what your needs are. That fund offers a 0% rate of interest for the first 5 years of repayment and 1% thereafter. It is a very low interest rate. Often sustainability projects in congregations both contribute to reducing the church's carbon footprint and save congregations a fair amount of money. And we have found that often those savings are more than sufficient to pay back that loan. Typically, we fund projects of around $50,000 with that fund. Excuse me for 1 second. But we have funded projects of up to $100,000 to $200,000. And so if you've got something that you'd like to try, please don't hesitate to reach out. I can be reached at daniel@tucc.ca. Happy to put that into the chat in just a moment. And the information on the loan fund is available at tucc.ca/loans. And our grants are a little bit of a longer link, so I'll just put that into the chat. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Daniel. And the links will be great. So do we have any questions right off the bat for Daniel about the TUCC Sustainable Energy Loan Fund or advice for writing a strong grant application?
Stephen here. I'll just quickly chime in. Faithful Footprints and Tuck have worked together. So you can talk to Daniel and me together, and we're delighted to help you together, and we have. So keep that in mind, again, as mentioned. I think Daniel's advice on difficulties of grants and having a plan, I think is absolutely solid information, except when doing Faithful Footprints. And that's only because I'm here to help you. And if you get the paperwork wrong, I'll send it back with a smiley face and we'll tweak it until we get it right. And we have 100% success rate for those who want to participate. And so, because we're all part of the United Church, right? And so Daniel's support, I think, is outstanding. And Daniel and I have worked together, and I think he's a great asset. But just so you know, don't be afraid of the paperwork when you're coming to the Faithful Footprints, and definitely don't be afraid of the paperwork when going to Tuck, because just wonderful people there. I can't say enough nice things about Tuck and Daniel's team. So I just wanted to give a shout out.
Thank you so much. So I'm going to actually move us into break now. So we'll just take maybe 5 minutes break, which would probably take us to 8:05 at this point. And so if anyone needs to get a glass of water, but before we break, I'll just say the participants so far have been fairly quiet tonight, but I see that there's at least 5 of you. So I'm going to maybe try to pick on you a little bit after the break. So if you have any questions you want to ask, think about that now, or else I'll have questions for you, because I kind of want to know, why are you here tonight? What are we presenting? Is it useful, or do you have other questions that we're not answering yet that we could do in a future webinar? So we'll come back to that in 5 minutes, but go get a glass of water if you need, and take a quick break. Okay, welcome back, everybody. Thanks for those of you who are still here. So first of all, we're just opening to general Q&A if you've thought of any questions over the break that you'd like to ask any of our presenters. Please go ahead. You can either write it in the chat or open your mic and just ask it. Or put up your hand. Agnes, oh, sorry. Diane has put up her hand. Okay, Diane, Nancy, and then Agnes. Great. Let's begin with Diane.
I just have a couple of questions. I'd want to confirm something. With Stephen, when you talked about that we could get money from other places to be part of our 1-to-2 ratio for the grant. Now you talked about municipal, and then then I started to think about TUCC. Would a loan from TUCC qualify as part of our funding or not?
Great question. Yeah, like if you got money from them, we don't necessarily, I'm the building guy, we're dealing with the chief financial office. They're not looking in your bank account. So if you're getting money from TUC, that is not a problem at all, and it's not a hindrance in the process. So if that's how you need to make your 1/3, cool. Totally okay.
Okay, and the other question I had was about the energy audit. When we're putting the grant in, I mean, the energy audit is a huge expense. Can it be included as a cost in the grant?
Yes, it can. So once we have our conversation, our kind of onboarding conversation, we'll typically do it via Zoom, so you can have all your team with you if you want. Any purchase after that can in fact be included, and that includes audits if you choose to do one, or if the last heat pump in Toronto comes available and it's the perfect thing, we don't want paperwork to stop you from being awesome and missing opportunities. So they set it up that way, and so yeah, yes, you can. Yep.
So, and it must be for a lot of these, it must be a true audit. It can't be a self.
So on the Faithful Footprints website, it does say we strongly recommend you have an audit.
Yeah.
That is my trump card when I'm playing euchre. And so
Okay.
I can enforce that if you are lovely humans and don't know anything about your building. But if you have someone, you've got a team who just knows where you're at and know what you're doing, or your boiler broke and you're replacing it, and you don't need to hire an expert from away to come in and tell you to replace your broken boiler. Those are stupid reasons to have audits. So the rationale for the audit is a conversation with
Okay.
Based on my building nerdness, and then we just see if it does make sense. And for some congregations it does, and for some it doesn't, and so it's a conversation.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Great questions.
Yeah, thank you for those questions, Diane. Next I see Agnes's hand, and then I think it was Nancy.
Hi, I have a question that I'm going to direct to Stephen and maybe Daniel. I know that in Ottawa, in particular, they've had a program through Green and Sacred Spaces Ottawa, another segment of Faith and the Common Good, to help churches. Oh my goodness! Help churches install EV chargers in their parking lot. Mm-hmm. So, Stephen, I know that the program that you're working on is specifically to reduce emissions and carbon footprint of the building. Can taking it a step further and helping the community through actions of the church be part of the grant program?
Yeah, it's a great question, Agnes. We have had conversations about including EV chargers. At this point, EV chargers are not included in the Faithful Footprints grant program. It doesn't mean they're not of interest. And same with Adam's presentation earlier. There's been conversations with the Faithful Footprints program to how could we help or leverage or create action for divesting. just like you and Adam, both you and Adam talking about. So at this point, and those are kind of broken down into categories, right? On-site emissions, purchased emissions like utilities, and then finances. Like there's different sort of processes when we're looking at carbon calculations. We're focusing on the first two for the building at this point. So and then I'll pass it over to Daniel to talk whether Tuck would cover EV chargers or not.
Yeah, it's I would say the list of qualifying projects that we have identified explicitly in the Sustainable Energy Loan Fund, I would say was drafted before the popularization of electric vehicles. And so they aren't explicitly named. Our qualifying projects list, however, does name. This list is not exhaustive, and emerging energy saving techniques may also qualify. So I think I would likely need to test that with my board, and I would be delighted to try. And so I would say if you've got a project in which you'd like to put an EV charger on your church facility and would like some loan funding, you should talk to me and we'll see what we can do.
Okay, that's really good news that the possibility is there. I'm in Ottawa and I'm not a United Church member, so I wouldn't qualify. But the fact that that is something under consideration is really good news. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Nancy, did you have a question? You're still muted, I think. So let's try again.
Part of it's been answered about, I was thinking about the $20,000, but then he explained later that you had to bring in $1 for every $2 that you get in the grant. So, okay, I think I understand that now. So I'm thinking we've been talking about, you know, it's about time we replace our gas furnace. Just a gas furnace for another gas furnace was the thought at the time, but we haven't done it yet. So I'm thinking, so if it's time to replace and we want to go to a heat pump, then would that be kind of the sort of thing that you're thinking about, Stephen?
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Nancy, what church are you with?
Nobleton United. And so it's a pretty small church. And then we did an expansion later to include offices and a better kitchen and all different things. So we actually have two furnaces. So, you know, one does the original church and one does the extension.
Yep, I'm just asking so I can Google Street View. Oh, your church is cute as a button. Love it. Yeah, so if you were to go just gas to gas, you would buy an Energy Star brand new gas furnace. You would be able to qualify for a maximum of $20,000. You are correct. So 1/3, 2/3 up to that cap. And anything else you wanted to throw in the mix. If you were to take one of those furnaces, even, it doesn't have to be all or nothing. So we're not black and white. If you were to take one of those furnaces and replace it with a forced air heat pump, so it's still running ductwork. Nobody knows the difference except the person paying the bills because your bills are so cheap. If you were to go with a forced air furnace heat pump, one of them even, that would then unlock the maximum $30,000. Yes. No.
Right. Okay.
And so we would have that question, you know, if your furnace is 5 years old, that's a hard sell. But if it's 35 years old, that's an easy sell.
Yes.
And
I'm not sure how many years, but I know the insurance was saying maybe it's time to look at a new furnace. So it must be about
is it oil or gas?
It's gas. It's gas.
Okay. Then yeah, like and when we do the first hour, we do the onboarding Zoom call. It takes about an hour, and we kind of have these questions, and you dig into the answers, and then we just figure out what is the best path forward for your congregation. So I really help sort of navigate that with you together.
Yeah, that sounds really good. I'm really glad I'm on this Zoom call. Thank you.
Glad to have you.
Fantastic question, Nancy. I don't know if you can share your contact information with Stephen in the chat or if you've got his. I mean, we did put that in the chat, I think.
Click the link, Nancy, in the chat to the Faithful Footprints. and you just fill out the green, click the green button on the grant page. I'll put it in again for you. And the Faithful Footprints grant, you click the green button and that fills out the form and that comes straight to me, and that's how we do it.
Yeah, because if Nobleton United is able to switch to a better furnace and get free money at the same time, why not, right?
Right. Absolutely.
I love giving out other people's money. It's a ton of fun.
Any other questions at this point? Ah, perfect. Diane.
I'm gonna get tired of my face, but I have another couple of questions. When we're doing these grants, look at several, the completion of several projects. What I want is, I guess, to give you an example, I'm from Emmanuel United Church in Brampton. We had a real push to try to replace all of our lights with LED lights, more efficient lights, and we've been pretty successful, but we have a very strange church with a very large tower with lights that are way up where we can't get to them, even with a lift. We got a lift in to change the sanctuary lights. If we took something like that, that was a small project, wouldn't come up to the grant total. But if we wanted to take and say, update some more of our appliances, can we put a number of small things in one grant?
Yeah, great question, Diane. You can apply once and only once, but you can have multiple items. So absolutely, I don't want you leaving money on the table. It just tears me apart, right? Because I'm so cheap. So really, that's, you know, especially when you're leveraging the money, right? Well, we're actually only going to pay this, like it's going to cost us this, but we're only going to pay a third of that. So could we, you know, leverage some more actions? That's definitely always the conversation. Always, for sure. How do we make more awesome for you? And I see your church. It's a classic post-war. Oh, I love that giant tower-osaurus there. That's pretty cool. Nice. Yeah.
And one more question, if you don't mind. Some churches in Brampton have installed solar panels.
Yes.
We have talked about it. Of course, if you contact a solar panel company, they're really pushing it. But is that a good use of funds, in your opinion?
Yes and no. So it's complicated. So that's the short answer. Yes and no. It is a great marketing. It is a great social awareness. It is a great environmental awareness. It is great to attract young people because they might not understand what the cross means, but they know what the panels mean. Like those are all really, and if there's great investment money, then it can be really financial boon. From an energy efficiency piece, if you are still rocking that Harvest Gold fridge in the kitchen, it's going to cost you 3 extra panels to power that beast in the kitchen. And it's way cheaper to replace the fridge. So from an economics perspective, you want 100% LEDs, you want Energy Star appliances throughout. Then at that point, solar panels can make economic sense. And we have put lots of panels across the country, and we will continue to do that. And we can help you with the first part, you know, we can help with all of that. Or if you've got that done and you're ready for that next step, we're there too.
Yeah, thank you. I'm just going to redirect this one to Daniel because I think that the
Yes.
has been involved with solar panel installations with the winter loans, right?
That is correct. And yeah, we love putting solar panels onto churches. And so if it's something you're interested in, yeah, because in many cases you are getting a direct payment from Hydro for them. They're a good fit for the Sustainable Energy Loan Fund. I mean, we feel that any energy efficiency reduces your hydro bill, and a savvy church treasurer is able to say, we have reduced our hydro bill by X. The loan repayment is Y. Y is less than X. This is easy, but it's nice when the yeah, well, it's easy when the money coming in is a little bit more visible.
Yeah. So my understanding is you don't pay any interest on the loan through TUCC. And then when you put in the solar panels, they pay you a certain amount per month and you can just use that to pay off the loan. So in the end, it doesn't really cost anything, maybe a little bit, but at one point it didn't cost anything depending on how much the pay-in tariff is.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I think the economics of each specific project are going to depend on the context. But the rate of return for solar panels is relatively good. And yeah, our interest rate is 0% for the first 5 years and then 1% thereafter.
Yeah, thank you. So who doesn't love
I have to
green?
say that personally from our church, TUC has been wonderful because not only do we have our manse money invested in TUCC, but they also gave us a loan for our boilers. So we have benefited from our relationship there. So, and we've always had really excellent help through TUCC. So I commend you on that.
Thanks, Dan.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, who doesn't love a green project that is attractive to the younger generation and costs you absolutely nothing? It makes you feel good about yourselves as a congregation, right? That seems win-win all around. And Helen, you have a question.
Oh, hi. Yeah, I'm at the same church as Diane. So again, we have a boiler heating system, which means no real ductwork kind of thing. And we don't have any form of air conditioning except window units in our hall, which we rent out to a daycare. So therefore we need window units and window units in the office, etc. Now I know heat pumps can be used for both heating and air conditioning. I don't know the structure of our church, you know, Diane, with regard to how practical they are. But, you know, with the summers getting hotter and the congregations getting older, it's not easy in the summer months, especially, well, basically from end of May through to the end of September, because sometimes it's just, you know, almost unbearable.
Yeah.
So I'm just wondering about that, you know, I know there's a lot of cost heat pumps, you probably need a lot of them, or if there's anything else, because it's a huge undertaking, as Diane mentioned. We relatively recently spent a lot of money updating or repairing our boiler, but it doesn't address our air conditioning issue.
Yeah, no, Helen, and interesting, Helen, that requirement and request for air conditioning has grown and grown across the country. Yeah, I have a congregation in Vancouver asking for air conditioning. Like this is where we're at. Like things are changing, which is why, you know, what Jay and the regional council is doing here is really critical, because we didn't grow up with it. We didn't need it, but we actually do, because if your place is unrentable, you're not going to stay open. It's just a physical fact. So window bangers, air conditioners, terrible energy efficiency, heat pumps. Again, it doesn't have to be all or nothing. You know, I did have one congregation, true story, fill out their expression of interest, and they said, we would like heat pumps so our administrator won't quit. That was literally the like so there are ways to go about heat pumps with your building, rooftop units, possibly mini split systems. Even if you have boilers, there are ways to do it. And so I would walk you and the team through that process of what those might look like, and then kind of send you on your way to have you give you enough information that you can have educated conversations with your contractors or potential contractors. That's really, I want to be empowering you to understand the opportunities. Yeah. And so yes, the answer is yes.
Thank you.
Awesome. And Ted, we'll take one final question. Thank you, Ted.
Yeah, I got a question for Stephen. We have a church with a second building, separate building.
Yep.
And obviously most of our energy use is in the main building. But the second building has a gas furnace, I guess you'd say. And I was thinking the obvious thing that does not have any air conditioning, the obvious thing would be to go with a heat pump,
Yep.
reduce some of the gas that we use.
Yep. What's your church, Deb?
Willow Grove in Sault Ste. Marie.
Oh, wow. Welcome.
So I guess the question you said, though, you're only allowed to do one. So if you did this obvious one and then later on you wanted to do something on the bigger one, which may
Well,
not.
I don't want you coming for like, you know, $5,000 worth of light bulbs and then going away and hoping to come back and get the heat pump next time, right? We don't want to do something like that. But you can have multiple items. Now, looking at your property here from satellite, so we're talking like the church hall. Now that is on the actual same property. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
Then we're all good because you get one electrical bill or one gas bill, or and even if they're two, as long as they're on the same property, we're good. If the hall is across the street on a different property, that becomes complicated because push come to shove, you would sell that. Same with the manses; they don't allow manses for that reason. But because it's all on one property, we can dance the dance. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, but we would have to figure out if we might want to do something, and it's probably not as big a saving because I don't think the air conditioning and the furnace are all that old.
Yeah. Well,
Usually.
so what you and everyone else can do is there's no pressure. Well, I'm not a sales guy. So you fill out the expression of interest, we have a conversation, and I give you a whole bunch of information. You're like, oh, okay, now I give you to-do work. Go think about this, go look at this, find out how old this is. And then if you as a team go, yeah, we're actually good right now. Cool, it's not a problem. You don't have to play. But next year, if you're like, oh, but next year, let's think about that. You can actually come back. It's all good. So I'm not like pressuring or pushing. You can actually start the process because we want to, if you're in the queue, again, and the furnace breaks down, you're already in the queue, right? So that gives you that power and that opportunity to know, oh, yeah, that guy, without scrambling and in panic.
So my question was more if we did decide to go with the heat pump, which seems like a pretty sort of a no-brainer almost.
Yeah.
But is that going to disqualify us if we later decided we wanted to do something else?
You can only apply once, so you can stretch that out because I don't give you the money till you're done all your things. So if you want to do heat pumps and some lights and some refrigerators, you can do all that. And you want to do the heat pump first and just wait and do the others next year. You're just not getting the money from me until you're all done. So as long as you carry that, as long as we got all that, the paperwork done in the first, that's the really critical piece. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, totally. And any reason for me to come up to the Sioux, man, I love that place. I'm all for it.
Yeah, you just missed the fall colors.
Thanks, Dave.
Glorious. Yeah, so thank you so much. So we're nearly wrapping up here. So I'm just gonna have a couple final points. Am I able to change slides? Sorry. Next steps. Here we go. So this is going to wrap our webinar series for a little while. If you have other topics you would love us to cover, feel free to email us, the Shining Waters Social and Ecological Justice Commission. Let us know what you'd like to see, and maybe we'll hold some more workshops in the future. But for now, all of our workshops that we have held over the last couple of years are available. I'll just share that here in the chat on our website. And if this was helpful for you and you have a friend who's in a different congregation and you think they might also want some free money to change their furnace, feel free to share the link. This link will go up in a couple of weeks, I think, once the editing has been done. So this and all of our previous talks are available on our website there too. But starting this winter, we're hoping to put together what we're calling the Planet Care Share drop-in sessions. So there'll be a similar format. They'll be on Zoom, but we won't have a lineup of speakers. Instead, we're going to be connecting with you in your congregations and asking you, what are you working on right now in your congregation? How is that going? Is there something that would be helpful in terms of a resource or someone we could connect you with to further your project along? And maybe we can start to create sort of clusters or groups or hubs of people working on environmental projects in the congregation within a network. So that's kind of our hope and dream. So watch out for dates for that coming out in the winter. And also we generally have an ask to you, which is that if you found an information session like this helpful and you think that there are people in your community who could use similar information, maybe not so much for this one, maybe more for our green spaces talk and that sort of thing, maybe consider holding an information session in your own congregation in which you invite community members and you share resources as well. Or if you want to have a design session, this was from a previous talk, I kind of forgot to cut it out, but I held a workshop on what green design might look like in your congregation. You can contact the Shining Waters Ecological Justice Commission, say that you want to talk to me, and I can hold a workshop with your congregation about what sort of green design projects might be appropriate for your congregation. And I can tell you that is also a topic that I think you younger adults might be interested in. So who am I? My name is Jay. I'm finishing my PhD in environmental engineering at the University of Toronto, and I've been working with the faculty. My subject matter is sulfur biochemistry and mining wastewater. Probably don't want to ask me about that, but in the meantime, I TA a course on engineering ethics and how green design and how design can be used to address environmental justice and social diversity and inclusion justice when engineers consider how they design systems and products. So that's where that's coming from.
Nice.
So thank you all for coming tonight. And I think that's 8:30. So I think that's a wrap. And I hope you reach out to us in the future. Take care.